Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 is going to be receiving the Techmarine class come December-January timeframe, but we don't think that this is the only class that is going to be arriving to Space Marine 2. And by we, I mean myself and First Tour Guardsman, who is joining me today. FTG, could you say hi to the audience?
Oh, what is up, guys? First Tour Guardsman here. We're going to be talking about potential new classes in Space Marine 2 after Techmarine. Now, Techmarine did have a bit of a leaked document a while back going over the class perks, and look a lot more interesting than base game classes, so we kind of want to go over these potential classes in the future.
Absolutely, and Techmarine is going to be kind of like a minion playstyle. We know it's going to have the Omnissiah axe just based off of the Year 2 battle plan, and it's going to have a shoulder-mounted gun, it's going to have turrets, and we're pretty sure that the Iron Hands cosmetic pack that is releasing later on in Year 2 is going to be for the Techmarine, and for Iron Hands specifically. So let's review what playstyles are missing from the game. And I guess I'll just ask you right off the bat, FTG, what kind of playstyles would you want to see in the game?
I would say, like in reference to Techmarine, Techmarine has a minion playstyle, most likely with these little turrets that are set up on top of like a long-range potential build for his shoulder gun. As far as like what people want to see in Space Marine 2 overall, a lot of people do want things like Apothecary, they want this healing class, but it seems that Saber Interactive is really trying to push healing out of the meta in a lot of cases. Like they talked about reworking Invigorating Icon entirely before. Unmatched Heal, Adrenaline Rush, and Invigorating Icon being like the three major healing perks in the game. Only two of those actually functioning team-wide. A lot of the player base loves these effects, but if you had a class like Apothecary that basically comes out as like a pure healing class, it kind of breaks the pickup economy of the game. Saber Interactive is dedicated to balancing their classes to some degree, and I really feel like that's not something we're going to see overall, despite what people may want, because like Apothecary, to me, I just think it's like a boring class archetype in general. Now, you mentioned something in particular that you wanted to get into for potential class, one that I haven't even thought of, never heard anyone even mention before, so want to explain that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I think that Space Marine 2 desperately needs a true melee DPS playstyle, and a lot of people immediately would jump the gun and assume, oh, well, a chaplain would be a perfect addition for the game. Well, the issue with chaplains is there's only one of them per company, and so Leandros isn't going to be playable, nor is he going to be joining us on these missions. It's more likely that we would see a Judiciar. And what Judiciars are, FTG, is they were introduced in 9th edition. They're basically these time-manipulating chaplains in training with these massive Executioner relic blades. And they are badass. And there are a lot of things...
for sure.
Yeah, and there are a lot of things that you could do with a Judiciar and with a true melee DPS class with a little bit of time manipulation on their side that fit into the game mechanics. For example, the way that snipers get their contested HP back with that one class perk... Purification, thank you. That can be just a mechanic just blanketed across the Judiciar in general. Like, they don't necessarily have to have a ranged weapon to rely on contested health regeneration. They could simply activate their relic, the Temper Mortis, in order to get it back. They could use the Temper Mortis in order to make themselves faster, make projectiles slower, move around them, etc., etc. There's a lot that they could do with the Temper Mortis, this ability to manipulate time around them. It's a pretty impressive piece of war gear, and it's quite unique. That's why I feel like it would work as a true melee DPS.
True melee DPS would be interesting. Saber did drop the community poll asking people if they want CHP recovery to be fundamentally changed to focus on melee rather than the ranged weapons in the game. As far as like deflection goes, it's something like this temporal manipulation of like ranged attacks and stuff like that, or slowing them down. Ranged combat in general, I feel like is the weakest part of Space Marine 2, and a lot of people seem to agree with that. There's not a lot of counterplay outside of just like, okay, you have to dodge the attack, and you have to get into their face, and if the enemy is enraged, you pretty much just have to keep dodging and shoot them back.
You have to
Melee
trade
attacks
with
just
ranged,
don't
yeah.
give you proper CHP recovery, and even if they did, the ranged enemies in this game, they just keep shooting you at point blank half of the time. It's very obnoxious. I think having like a proper lockdown mechanic like a Judiciar could be pretty interesting, because right now we don't really have a lot of CC for enemies outside like some initial stagger. They seem to be moving that direction a little bit with things like the shield rush mechanic on Bulwark, and I don't know if you're entirely aware of this, but they did say they were trying to add mechanics like that to all the classes,
Oh.
like the shield rush mechanic, not necessarily being, you know, like literally the shield rush mechanic, but something unique to every single class.
Using
over
war
the
gear overall,
yeah,
in other
stuff like
ways,
that.
basically.
So
That's
hopefully
actually
that'll
really
add some
cool.
counterplay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they mentioned that a little bit in their dev review, or like one of the patch notes.
Okay. And I will say that, so if they were to just completely drop the nuke and nerf Invigorating Icon for the Bulwark, I could see that making a lot of stratagems significantly harder for a lot of players. These hard stratagems are not a walk in the park for a lot of people in the community. I think that you and I both agree that most people who enjoy Space Marine 2 generally float around Ruthless difficulty. They're playing around Ruthless difficulty to do their prestige grind, unlock their cosmetics, etc., etc. And so just kind of dropping a nuke and removing Invigorating Icon without having a secondary option available to fill that gap is kind of the reason why I think that Apothecary would be a very good fit in Space Marine 2. And they're obviously not just a healing or support playstyle. One of the things that I envision an Apothecary doing is almost being like a lone agent to go in and recover the gene seed of their fallen brethren. Basically having a class that is kind of a playmaker, a last man standing class, if you will. It'd be really cool if this class basically got better if your teammates went down, but obviously the playstyle would focus on supporting them, keeping them up, and then buffing them as well. All this would be done with their war gear, the Narthessium, I believe is how it's pronounced, and I think that some of the most iconic apothecaries are the Sanguinary Priests from the Blood Angels. Not sure if you'd agree with that.
They are definitely notable for that. As far as Apothecary goes, outside just like their champion pack we're going to talk about, I feel like I've seen some suggestions that Apothecary should be a debuff machine for the enemy rather than like a buff machine, healing machine for your teammates. I do feel like healing mechanics in this game are very strong, and like part of that may need like a rework on like the pickup side of things as well, because just finding stims, they did mention like a new pickup is going to be added to the game,
Right.
potentially having like more healing options depending on what we're doing in like in the future of Space Marine 2. But having new pickups is a pretty unique thing. That's something I never expected to see in Space Marine 2 in general. And as far as Apothecary goes, like I said before, I really don't think they're going to add in like pure healing mechanics anymore. Maybe they will, but as far as a like debuff mechanic goes, having more debuffs for enemy is a pretty interesting idea, because we already have them in the game. Like if you're unaware, perks like active attrition, they do actually apply a debuff for your entire team. Like the enemy will take 15% more damage. Having like you know, an AoE an Apothecary could put down or something like that with their gun, and just basically debuff all the enemies to do less damage or slow down their projectiles and stuff like that. That'd be pretty interesting idea to make them like a support class without being totally broken. As far as a champion goes, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Blood Angels, so having them as a Blood Angel champion, that makes a lot of sense, and also would be pretty cool. But I feel like if you have another Blood Angels champion that is not Sanguinary Guard, people are going to flip out.
That is true. That is actually 100% true. And for those of you guys who aren't tracking, the reason why FTG mentions that is because the Blood Angels champion that's coming out at the end of November is not going to be Sanguinary Guard. It's going to be for the tactical. You are going to be getting a jump pack for the assault, but it is not a Sanguinary Guard. So if you were expecting that, then it's not. What's up?
It is, on the note of the jump pack, it is pretty interesting to me that this is the first champion pack we've ever had where not only will you be able to switch the armor pieces immediately like the Black Templar, but you will also be getting an entirely separate class customization option that is like independent of the initial champion pack. What I mean by that is, you know, like this Blood Angels champion will be like a full outfit for the Blood Angels on the tactical, and then you'll have this jetpack that is added as like an additional item, which is pretty interesting. These champion packs are definitely getting better in year 2. I think we we talked about this before quite a bit, but customization is fundamental to 40k, and the fact that like every single champion pack seems to be releasing alongside like the major updates, on top of the fact that it seems like the Techmarine will be getting the Iron Hands champion pack released like immediately after.
Right.
They're really like
Yep.
keeping this in mind, like keep it thematic with the new classes. I feel that's why they've been saving Iron Hands for so long in general. I imagine we'll see something like that for like Apothecary and such, or Judiciar.
Yeah, what I also enjoy is that every time a champion pack comes out, it's kind of a huge W for every other class, because you could just take those cosmetics and apply them to every other class. I've pretty much just lost count of the number of Dark Angels champion helmets that I've seen on assaults, for example.
Oh yeah.
Like they're everywhere.
Dark Angels are a popular chapter, I'm gonna
Yep.
say.
But diving more into the data sheets for all three of these classes, the Techmarine, the Apothecary, and the Judiciars, let's start with the Techmarine first, because this gives us some good indicators of what could be coming up for heroic weapons, new weapons in general, and just for what the Techmarine can be using on the battlefield. I'm putting all my eggs in this basket. I think that the Techmarine might be a one melee weapon kind of class. I think that the Omnisign Power Axe is gonna be their only melee weapon, and maybe the Thunderhammer as well, but I could see it being a class that doesn't really have a primary weapon. What do you think about that, FTG?
I mean, that makes a lot of sense because they do have this shoulder gun that's permanently attached to them. In the leaked perk files, it show like you can basically spec it into a plasma gun or like a long range scatter shotgun or a sniper rifle, basically.
Yeah,
so
like
that taking like the form of your primary gun makes a lot of sense. And like that on top of turrets, I feel like you have more than enough firepower with the Techmarine at that point.
Yeah.
And as long as that's like having a single secondary as your only real range option, like directly on the class, is new to this game. We already have that bulwark and assault. My big issue with that is like ammunition, how the shoulder guns ammunition work. They did mention the sentry turrets will have their own ammunition, their own HP. That makes a lot of sense, but like as far as your shoulder gun goes, it might probably just have like a cooldown or something. But ammunition restore, I feel like is a big issue in Space Marine 2 for classes that don't have it. It feels pretty bad to like run out of ammo versus like zoanthropes and stuff like that, and you're severely limiting the class capabilities versus those enemies if you don't give them a primary in a lot of cases. But depending on how strong the shoulder gun is, that might circumvent that entirely. But as far as the Omniscience Axe goes, I mean, that could be his only melee weapon, and it would make a lot of sense because I don't really see why they would go so far to like announce it individually if they weren't trying to hype people up for it. And having like an Omniscience Power Axe plus another Power Axe on top of this class, it might be a little redundant, and we'll have to see what the moveset's like for it, of course. But really having the Techmarine play as like a totally unique class, I think would be a good thing for it.
I actually just thought of something. Would you be okay if we were getting one class per year? If each of these new classes had limited armories, like limited gear that they were able, or weapons that they were able to equip, if it meant that we can get one new class per year? Like for example, if the Techmarine releases and all you can use on it are the Omnisign Power Axe, the Thunderhammer, and the secondary guns that we have currently in the game, would you be content with that? And then in the future, when we get the Judiciar really right now in the Codex really only uses the Executioner Relic Blade. They do have the Absolver bullet pistols, but the Executioner Relic Blade is like the bread and butter for them. What if the class released with just one weapon? Like, what are we feeling here? What's the temperature check on this?
I think I'm a little hesitant, only because it depends on how in-depth the melee weapon is. We saw the state the Power Axe launched in, which is a lot weaker than it should have been. It's still weaker than it should be, and like some of its unique mechanics are not even tied to all of these other options, or like the unique power stance is not tied to the block version. And it might kind of pull players away from the class in some ways, like there's less to level up on it, but like, again, the leveling grind in this game does kind of suck. My biggest worry would be like how unique is the weapon individually to like be the sole weapon on the class? How much effort will they put into like its animations, which I assume will be pretty high, but like its perk tree, the variance of this weapon, because As we've gone further into Space Marine 2 with like, the new weapons being added, Power Axe was the first melee weapon we ever got. And Power Axe has some pretty unique mechanics to it, but as far as its perk tree goes, I feel like it's a little lackluster, and seeing that like an Omniscience Power Axe, when it is the only melee weapon on the class, that could be pretty detrimental. And, no shade, well, actually a little bit of shade versus Saber. Their perk design in this game is not very interesting, so like having
Yeah.
one weapon to hold people over, I'm not sure how I'd feel about that necessarily. It'd have to be pretty damn good. And as far as like secondary options go, or like a primary weapon, my bigger complaint or worry would be that they really do seem to just like move items all over the classes at times, and not give them weapons they should. Like Tactical really should have a power sword in this game, and they basically took the heavy bolt pistol, which was previously only on the assault class, and spread it out across all of them.
Yeah.
And doing that
Hey
did
guys, like
kind
new
of
content.
remove. Yeah, it's new content, exactly. They gave it to everyone, and like the bolt pistol kind of fell off because of
Yeah.
that for classes that used to have to use it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm worried that that would happen with some of the new weapons if they were to move them in all the other classes, because that does seem to be what like Saber likes to do in like the off season, if you will. But as far as the heroic weapons could circumvent that, though.
The heroic weapons can do a lot of, repairing of that, or applying band-aid fixes to that, or I guess bridging that even. But I feel like this is a situation that could become a reality. We're gonna see with Techmarine when it releases. We're gonna get a real temperature check of what these new classes look like going forward in Space Marine 2. Of course, if and when we continue to get them after the Techmarine. One thing that is kind of a strong industry indicator is how the release of the Arbites was handled with Darktide. So with the Arbites and Darktide, which is a class that you had to buy, the class didn't include a lot of the weapons that the other humanoid classes in the game can already use. Like, for example, the Arbites can't really use last weapons. They can't really use a lot of the bladed weapons. You pretty much have a couple of class-exclusive weapons for the Arbites that are kind of just the best weapons to use on it, such as the Executioner Shotgun, the Shock Maul and Shield, and the Arbites Shock Maul. But for the most part, it's pretty content light. The class itself is the new piece of content. And I could kind of see something similar happening for Space Marine 2, especially as we get into these classes that seem to have much more niche roles. Like, for example, with the Techmarine, like, yes, you could release a new class with the Omniscience Power Axe, but there's nothing that stops the Techmarine from just picking up a regular Power Axe, picking up a regular Power Sword, Chain Sword, whatever the case may be. In fact, there's nothing stopping pretty much any of these classes from picking up any weapons in the Space Marine arsenal. Technically, every single one of them should be able to use whatever. But
I feel like Saber does like to keep class identity pretty tight. Like,
yeah.
I'm honestly shocked to this day if they still added like heavy bolt pistol to every single class in the game. As far as melee weapons go, they did add the combat knife to the tactical, but like in some of these cases, people hardly ever use the combat knife on the tactical anyways, and like for a long time it was just Chainsword in that class, and nobody expected more for him. I would like to see Power Sword, like I mentioned before, but as far as like class identity goes, I feel like most of the class identity from a class should not be from its melee weapons. It should be from its like class perks, starting perks, class ability, and stuff like that. And those should really change the way you play. And the fact that Space Marine 2 it changes up so much just based on like one gun, I feel is more so of a failing on the perk trees than the actual class identity being like super good with the different weapons.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yes. Now, returning to these stat sheets, though. So we went over the Primaris Techmarine and the weapons that they can use. We also have the Primaris Apothecary, and basically on their stat sheet, they kind of just tell you, like, you could use any close combat weapon. These are going to be your stats for it. And then you have the Absolver Bolt Pistol and the Reductor Pistol. Now, I believe it's Dawn of War 2, but in Dawn of War 2, the Apothecary can just kind of use whatever, like ranged weapons that you can equip on them. And so they differ from the Codex reference slightly, but this, of course, on the Codex, this could be balancing for the tabletop. and in other editions, the Apothecary probably could just use whatever ranged weapon as well. So it's definitely
I
not...
imagine
I don't think it's a limiting
Apothecary would
factor.
probably have like bolt carbines.
Yeah.
You'd probably see like a similar to like tactical arsenal, because right now tactical has like the most bolt weaponry of any class.
Yep.
And his melee weapons are just lacking some options. But like tactical classes are supposed to be like, it's supposed to be like a Stern Guard light, and Stern Guard have basically everything. So we'll see what they do for things like Apothecary, and like if they give them more. I don't think Saber's against giving classes like more options, because adding in a brand new weapon, like surely the Omniscia axe will only be on the Techmarine. I'd be
Right.
shocked if it went to any other class. But as far as the update goes for like a new class, on what you mentioned previously about like the class being the new content, I imagine in the Q2 of next year, when Techmarine actually releases, we're going to see a huge balance change, maybe some like reworks of some enemies and stuff like that, and
Right.
then we'll see the Techmarine release in the same patch, and that will be the big update, maybe like a mission or something. But as far as like the overall like big boom would come, I think it would just be the Techmarine plus those reworks and stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then of course the last data sheet that we have to go over would be the Judiciar, and all their stats are weighted towards melee here. You can equip an Absolver bolt pistol, but this guy is going to do the most damage he can do, basically right up close. And the Tempora Mortis here specifies, while this model is a leading unit, this unit has the Fight's First ability, basically making them fast. They are extremely fast with this relic, and it leans into that just true melee DPS playstyle, basically having something that could, for one example that I thought of when I was thinking of this class was like, wouldn't it be great to just be able to break a stun lock? Wouldn't that be fantastic? Or wouldn't it be great?
It would be nice to break a stun lock, but I feel like, okay, if we're going on the topic of melee weapons here, like a melee only build, I am not fundamentally against this idea, Jeff, but what frightens me about this is that the melee system in Space Marine 2, as it currently stands, is underbaked.
Yeah.
Especially versus not having a ranged weapon is an enormous detriment in this game. And I did say, like we mentioned before, they're going to be like prioritizing CHP recovery on melee weapons versus the ranged weapons at some point. But I feel like we're going to see an entire rework to like contested health recovery in general, not just for like, the CHP amounts, but like the actual delay on how much CHP you lose over time. And I'm more so worried that they do like shove this class out and it has like no ranged weapon, it's just like one bolt pistol. Those are like usually the worst feeling classes in the game versus the most obnoxious enemies like zoanthropes and stuff like that. And a lot of your stagger in Space Marine 2 comes from these ranged weapons like Inferno pistol, plasma pistol, and stuff like that. And if you're relying on a melee weapon to do that versus like an enraged guy, melee versus enraged is one of the most obnoxious things in all of Space Marine 2 when it's like an enraged Majoris, like a ranged Majoris. And that would be my biggest fear for this. So we'll see. I'm not fundamentally against the idea. I would love to see an Executioner Relic Blade, but as far as like giving him a bolt pistol, I imagine they probably would. I don't know if we'd ever see like a purely melee class, but like a super prioritizing one, even more so than like Bulwark and Assault. I could definitely see that.
Yeah, they would have to really lean on other mechanics that we may not necessarily have seen yet. For example, you brought up that Saber is trying to implement, I'm going to call it tech, very similar to what the Bulwark can do with their shield bash and their shield charge. And so they would have to expand the melee system in that way. And also with the Executioner Relic Blade, similar to the Power Fist. So the Power Fist in 40k does not necessarily like smash the air like Whitebeard in One Piece and basically create this shockwave that does like ranged damage. That's not necessarily what Power Fists do in 40k. That is a Space Marine 2 like mechanic specifically. And I could see them adding that onto more melee weapons as well, just so that melee weapons have the ability to do things like reach zoanthropes or neurothropes, so that a melee class like this wouldn't be too far-fetched. But that's of course up in the air. We have no idea if Saber is even going to add more classes after the Techmarine, though we have a long time to wait before Space Marine 3, so it would certainly be a missed opportunity to add more classes. And I think that Saber and Focus understand that more classes just means more opportunities to add more champion packs, which means it's more opportunities for them to make money by selling their annual season passes. Would you agree with that?
I would definitely agree with that. The season pass is their primary form of monetizing their game at this point. It kind of goes to show that Space Marine 2's community is so perpetually fed cosmetics that they will buy every time, and really just 40k communities in general, like this is their primary form of getting new content in the game and monetizing it. Because you look at Darktide has to they sell you the new classes they make, and in the game like Space Marine 2, you're basically just buying champion packs over and over. So it makes sense if they're trying to have these new champion pack incentives on top of classes, this would be the main way they would monetize their game. I do feel, that's a bit tangential, but I do feel like Space Marine 2 should just go for the full live service model. I know it's it might be a toxic thing for some people. It basically is a live service at this point.
Hot take.
Hot take
Alert.
But I feel like if this game was actually a live service, if they just bit the bullet, which I think they probably will in Space Marine 3, I actually think that, here's my actual tinfoil hat theory here, is that Space Marine 3's development, Games Workshop saw Space Marine 2 pop off, and they were like, holy shit, this is insane. Okay, roll out that content every single year while you work on Space Marine 3, because Saber Interactive is always working on multiple games, not new for their company. But, they said, announce Space Marine 3, make sure everybody knows it's coming, and then keep adding stuff to Space Marine 2. Do not call it a live service, and then Space Marine 3 will come out, and Games Workshop is like, okay, this one we know is going to bang, everyone's going to pick it up, and we're going to fully support this game as our live service Space Marine game, because they're already kind of been doing that with Tacticus. That's their mobile game. They want they want their Helldivers 2, basically. That's what I think Games Workshop wants.
They would love to have a Helldivers 2. They would.
Yeah, that's what they want. So that's my tinfoil hat, is that they were going to go full live service in the next one.
Yeah,
and probably going to force customization down people's throats.
I could see that happening, and it also begs the question, because we're already talking about classes, let's say we get 3 more classes in Space Marine 2 over the course of the next 3-4 years, whatever. Do these classes port over to Space Marine 3? Do they try to innovate Space Marine 3 beyond the class system? So the game would go beyond the class system. Maybe your weapons and the perks that you choose become your class. Maybe there's much more in-depth character customization, etc., etc. Obviously, it's too early to tell, but judging by the fact that a lot of Space Marine 2's features are simply innovations upon what we've seen in World War Z, I think that we're not really going to get much beyond what we have with the current class system, and hopefully, if Saber adds new classes in the future, all of the new classes in Space Marine 2 appear as base classes in Space Marine 3.
I imagine they will. I think you're on the money there, that they will definitely just asset flip 99% of Space Marine 2. I've seen people talk about Tyranids not showing up in the next one, or Thousand Suns not showing up in the next one. I don't think there is a single chance they just throw away all these models they made, and they throw away all the game mechanics they made around these guys, and they just skip it over for the next one. My biggest worry for Space Marine 2 is not so much about it being an asset flip. It's more so I want the balance to be proper, or at least at least where it is right now in Space Marine 2 on launch, rather than waiting a year for it to get half 3. Decent. Yeah, on Space Marine 3?
Yes.
On launch, I wouldn't want it to be because the launch for Space Marine 2 was horrific in balance. The melee weapons all felt like trash. There were 4 ranged weapons that dominated the entire game. I don't think that Space Marine 3 can handle that. I think people will play it. They'll probably enjoy it, but if Space Marine 2 launched the way it is now, on the initial launch, it would have just been in a way better spot for players. I think more players would have stuck around. They did do a pretty good job of getting players back. Accolade and Hard Stratagems definitely did their job. People are definitely playing longer than usual. But a big issue for Space Marine 3 is just that asset flip is fine, but make sure the balance is there, because I am personally not against having any type of asset flip. All good games are built upon this in some shape or form.
Yeah,
across franchises.
Dark Souls to Elden Ring. A lot of that is asset flipping. a lot of it.
Even like Devil May Cry will like recycle enemies. Be like, oh my god, it's the enemy from the last game. Monster Hunter does this as well. It's just like, it's just how games work in a lot of cases. It's not really a bad thing, but there has to be new there alongside the old. And I don't think anybody would have a huge problem with like, okay, it's just Tyranids but better, or it's just like Thousand Suns but fun this time on top of one more faction. Yeah, but fun this time. I mean, I think it's pretty fun with Chaos fun, but like, I mean, it's something to work. I feel like Chaos is a faction that's like missing 2 enemies to like properly round it out, but
sure, yeah.
One day we'll get there.
I think that the smoking gun, and this is going to be the decision that makes or breaks Space Marine theory for a lot of the people in the community right now, is, and this has nothing to do with classes, well, kind of, are cosmetics going to transfer to Space Marine 3? Are the cosmetics that people purchased in Space Marine 2 going to be available in Space Marine 3? If the game is sufficiently different enough, I don't mind if they aren't, but at the same time, depending on the monetization structure of the next game, like you said, they could make it more of a conventional live service and basically make players rebuy everything that they've pretty much already made and everything that players have already spent money on, which would be insane. That would lead to riots in the streets, exterminatus, perhaps.
I will be real. I think that the current player base is not the one that Saber Interactive cares about entirely when it comes to that.
Oh my god,
what they're
all the hot takes. Hot take alert!
Okay, let's just think about the launch of Space Marine 2. A lot of people, the majority of people who played Space Marine 2, they came in at launch, they played the campaign, they played a little bit of operations, and they moved on, even if they had the season pass. What Saber Interactive wants to do is take all those players who just moved on, and they want to just like sell them the year pass that all the suckers like me bought the past 2 years, and or like in the past year now, and then just like come out with all the cosmetics again and have a fundamentally larger player base than this game did. And it would probably work. I imagine there'd be some controversy, but like Games Workshop, they don't really give a shit about controversy. It happens all the time to them. They do crazy stuff all the time. And people still buy it all the time. Like, maybe it's just like, maybe it is a hot take to say it, but like, I mean, for a lot of 40k players, a year 1 pass is like the cheapest thing they bought all year. So it's like, they're gonna complain about it, but honestly, people are probably still going.
Primaris Marines in general should have been the scandal of a lifetime for the entire franchise. The fact that they basically just re-released every single Space Marine and not made you buy them again, but basically made you buy them again, was absurd. And that should have been something that broke the franchise, but it didn't. So here we are.
Yeah, 40k fans are in too deep, what can we say?
Yeah, we really are in too deep.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I bought the Ultimate Sucker Edition of Space Marine 2, and like that was when it still sucked. So it's like, what are you gonna do?
Same, yeah. I pre-ordered it. Cool. No pre-order.
Me too. I bought my my 3-day early access version. That was fun, but like if I had known it was gonna be this good later, I probably would have purchased it like on sale or something.
I would have purchased it on sale as well. Yeah, that's what I always tell people, especially if they weren't there, I guess, on initial release. But in order to prevent us from dropping any more hot takes, I think this is a great place to end the video. Guys, we talked about basically the Techmarine and then 2 more potential classes that could be added in the future that I believe, and that FTG also believes to a certain extent, would be thematic or iconic to 40k, would work within the bounds of the Space Marine 2's combat system, and would fill niches that are currently missing from the game, or at the very least can be created. For example, by removing something like Invigorating Icon, you would basically remove the game's best healer, and the Apothecary might have a surviving niche.
That might actually be the hottest, the biggest controversy Space Marine 2 ever has.
Oh yeah, it's gonna make a lot of people rage out. And then if you remove the Vanguard's team perk as well, and basically just kind of shift that over to the Apothecary, like, hey, this is the healing class.
I do feel like Saber Interactive is a company to do it, though. They don't really care. They would just throw it in.
But guys, go ahead and head over to FTG's channel and subscribe to him. He is awesome, and I appear on his channel all the time as a co-host in very similar videos. Subscribe to me as well. FTG, do you have any
Subscribe to
last
Jeff.
words? Oh, thank you.
No, thank you for having me on, man. It's always
Yeah.
fun to do these.
Yeah, these are really fun conversations to have. Guys, we also now have a Discord. And if you are watching this before October 19th, we are going to be having a Drip Marine 2 fashion competition. Sounds strange,
Drip
but
Marine too.
gosh, people love Drip Marine, man. People love the fashion and all the cosmetics in this game.
Oh yeah.
If you
Heraldry's
are
fundamental.
Hell yeah, man. And if you are vaguely interested, join the Discord. The link is gonna be in the description below. And yeah, come watch. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a great time. But the Emperor protects, guys. Have a good one.